Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR and podweather.com with an update on EDOUARD, which continues to get a little bit better organized from the Gulf of Mexico. You can see it sitting there just south of the mid-Louisiana coastline, intercoastal city there, Houma, New Orleans, and it's sitting there off the coast, moving slowly westward with a gradual bend towards the north expected over the next 24 hours, making landfall maybe in about 24 hours or so, close to hurricane strength. You can see elsewhere we have this big blow up, a lot of upper level divergence in this area. What that basically means is instability, and we're getting a lot of instability there, and that's always something you have to watch. It is August, and if this were to move in this general direction, we could always get one of those quick Bay of Campeche storms that you need to keep an eye on. And we still have our wave that's traversed the Atlantic ever since Dolly was out there, and we always thought this would become EDOUARD, but it couldn't make it, and it's still looking very pitiful out here. I'll talk about that as well. Here's the latest on Tropical Storm EDOUARD as of 5 p.m. Eastern. It was at 28.3 north, 91.4 west. Maximum sustained winds were still near 45 miles an hour, gusting up towards 55, and the movement was westward at 6, and that pressure was 1,000 millibars. Since then, recons found it as low as 998, 999, so slow intensification is occurring, but nothing very quick, which is good news. The track's pretty straightforward. Later tonight and early Tuesday, moving closer to the upper Texas, western Louisiana coastline, and making landfall a little bit later than it looked like. It was moving pretty good, and then it kind of slowed down. So sometime early tomorrow afternoon, maybe about 24 hours from now, generally near Galveston, Texas, but again, it could be as far north as Cameron, Louisiana, and as far south and west as Port O'Connor, Texas. Now, in response to all this, we do have tropical storm warnings up all the way from the mouth of the Mississippi all the way over towards Port O'Connor, and that's basically a very wide stretch of the Gulf Coast. Hurricane watch is in effect now for the Texas and western Louisiana region, because it is quite possible that EDOUARD could become a hurricane, but it's still not known. What is known is that tropical storm force winds are already impinging and impacting extreme South Louisiana, and that's going to cause some problems as we have that onshore flow that we're going to be watching very carefully over the next 24 hours or so. Now here's the visible satellite loop, and note right at the end there, that burst of convection that starts to fire right there. That's a sign of intensification. Right in here is where the center is, and you have convection bursting. Still a little disorganized on the western side. This hasn't always been a great candidate for organization, but it does have potential, because you could definitely see there is good organization blowing up near the center, which means that it is trying to intensify, and as those thunderstorms blow up and the pressure drops, we will get those winds to increase. It does look as though it might be moving a little bit more west-northwest, but it may have slowed down. You can see that a little bit better here on the radar. Note how the center, which is clearly right in this region, really hasn't moved much. It's moving westward, but it almost looks like it's just kind of sitting there and spinning. It might be. With storms like this over the Gulf, a lot of times you'll see it moving west at 10 miles an hour, then suddenly not moving, then moving again. And that's why it's so irritating, because if this were to sit and spin and the ridge weakened down enough, it'd be interesting to see if this actually looped around and then just kind of came on in. That almost is what the loop looks like. However, eventually this little buffer is going to quit, and it's going to move on up in this direction in about 24 hours. But again, 24 hours to get here, and it's not even moving that fast. You keep seeing the landfall time get put off more and more, and that's going to leave it over water for a longer time, which means it could get stronger. Again, it's trying to close off this inner core, and it doesn't really have that good of one. Right in there, you can see it tries to close off, and if this wraps all the way around and starts to tighten over these hot waters, it could well make a try for hurricane strength. Note this band of heavy weather. This is heading for the Texas coast. Even areas like Matagorda Bay over here, you could feel that band in, say, 6 to 10 hours, certainly if it pools around. The Hurricane Center did note that the wind field, based on the aircraft, is expanding. So the winds are starting to reach out a bit more, and that's why we're getting them felt along the coastline there of Louisiana. Another vantage point of EDOUARD, you can see it sitting here again, much more symmetric than it's looked. It really has been lopsided, but even though it's still a little lopsided, it's starting to get more of a symmetric look as the pattern gets better. Boy, these tiny ones like this always scare the devil out of you, because if it really had time over water and that inner core established, you saw what happened with Dolly. Dolly made 100 miles an hour, didn't even have that much time. But again, as the ridge of high pressure backs away, we're going to see EDOUARD generally come on up. You can see the IR is not all that impressive, never did have much deep convection, but it should still intensify and move towards the coastline. Now, as far as the models are concerned with EDOUARD, pretty straightforward. West, west-northwest, west-southwest, generally west towards the upper Texas coast. And the Canadian is here, the no gaps, the Navy no gaps is here, GFDL, HWRF, BAMS, UK Met, they're all clustered right here, generally towards Galveston. So Houston, Galveston, be prepared for an impact by EDOUARD for sure, but it could very well be further north or further to the south. It's still kind of uncertain if the system doesn't keep steady on a westward course, but right now it should. The upper level pattern compared to yesterday has gotten much better. You can see very low wind shear over the system, and still a little bit of wind shear around it, but gradually a better environment. You can see it better when I show you where the wind barbs are, and it still has that northerly flow, but it's not as strong. It's down to 5 knots, whereas yesterday it was a solid 10 knots at least, and that's allowed the system to kind of, you see this bulge here, that's kind of starting to form that pattern that we see with developing hurricanes, and so that's why we're beginning to see kind of that apostrophe shape with EDOUARD and that tightening of the core. It knows that it's over water and conditions are getting favorable, and it's trying to take every opportunity it can to strengthen. Also, low-level convergence has really gotten strong. Yesterday there was almost none, and we had no tightening, no convection, and suddenly today that's changed. Now, as far as water temps are concerned, the system's right here, and again, it's going to be moving over a very, very hot pool of water. We don't typically see systems right here this time of year. Last few years, we've had this boiling hot water right here off the Texas-Louisiana coast, and the only time we really had a significant storm over there was Hurricane Rita, and that was undergoing such inner core fluctuations, and it was late September that it couldn't really take heed of that. So we'll see just how EDOUARD responds to these hot waters over here. Now, we do have another system out there, that's Invest 99L. We've been tracking it for days, and it's currently situated here north and northeast of Puerto Rico and the Lesser Antilles, moving west-northwest. It's going to eventually get turned, it looks like, based on the models, and then off to the northeast. Whether or not it does that near Bermuda, if it's anything to really concern ourselves with, again, there is always the potential that something becomes a tropical storm or even a hurricane as it pulls out, and even if it didn't amount to much, that'd still be another name knocked down on this list, and we are certainly cooking for this hurricane season. You can see the system there. There is still low pressure right in there, the little claw in there, and the very skimpy convection. Winds out of the east in the islands, and that's basically that flow pushing the wave along, and the wave's not looking all that good. The environment's not all that great for it. You can see water temperatures are pretty warm, so if it did want to do something, at least water-wise, it would have that hot water to fuel it. Off the coast of Africa, we have another wave, a big mess here, nothing discernible in particular, and just going to watch it move west. It's that time of year. And in the western Pacific, since the East Pack is quiet, the West Pack has to be brewing, of course. And yesterday we saw this system 24 hours later, clearly a tropical storm situated here, headed for China. And let me tell you, this is Tropical Storm 10W. I believe it'll be named something. I don't know what, but we'll figure it out. And it was at 19.5 north, 117.1 east. Winds were 40, gusting to 50, moving west at 9. It's going to become a typhoon, it looks like, and then come in here south of China, maybe near Vietnam. I believe this is Vietnam, this is China. Sorry, my geography for the West Pack's a little off, but heading in that general direction, a lot of heavy rain with it. You'll want to keep an eye on it. Stay tuned for the latest on EDOUARD, only on Internet Partnership Radio.